tonight, just a little bit interesting topic, just looking at different things, and looking at the idea of how easy, Satan works in a lot of different ways, and and a lot of times he doesn't come at us right toward our face. So there's ways that he, if one way doesn't succeed, he goes around a different way, and so we're just for the sake of time, we're going to look at Balaam tonight, and look at the way of Balaam, the error of Balaam, and the doctrine of Balaam, and looking at who he is. We're quite familiar with him in the Bible, and yet it's always refreshing to go back and see, especially when you look at, we're going to be in Numbers 22. Look at the just go back and look at the way he did it, the way he convinced Balak to, have Israel sin against the Lord. And so Balaam is kind of one of those characters that, he's mysterious in some ways. You're trying to figure out, is he really a prophet or God, or is he just somebody that's, there's places that call him a soothsayer. He's a one that takes bribes or money, and as we see here in this passage, and there's a warning here, because we find that he's mentioned oftentimes in the Bible as to watch out for the way of Balaam, the doctrine of Balaam, and of course the error that he thinks within himself about leading God's people away from the Lord, basically. And so Balaam, just for a matter, just get my brain engaged here. I'll probably have someone read just so my voice don't go out. But Numbers chapter 22, if someone could read, let's just go 1 through 6 for now. And do I have a volunteer to read that, Brother Ryan? All right, thank you.
And the children of Israel set forward and pitched in the plains of Moab on this side Jordan by Jericho. And Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. And Moab was sore afraid of the people because they were many. And Moab was distressed because of the children of Israel. And Moab said unto the elders of Midian, Now shall this company lick up all that are round about us as the ox licketh up the grass of the field. And Balak the son of Zippor was king of the Moabites at that time. He sent messengers therefore unto Balaam the son of Beor to Pethor, which is by the river of the land of the children of his people, to call him, saying, Behold, there is a people come out from Egypt. Behold, they cover the face of the earth, and they abide over against me. Come now, therefore, I pray thee, curse me this people, for they are too mighty for me. Peradventure I shall prevail, that we may smite them, and that I may drive them out of the land. For I wot that he whom thou blessest is blessed, and he whom thou cursest is cursed.
All right. Those of you familiar with this, we find that, of course, in just reading that as well, we find Balak here, the king of Moab, was one here that was afraid. Afraid of who? Israel. Israel was at the end of close to the end of their journey out of the wilderness there, and say really close to entering the promised land, and they had a little bit to go, but it says they're at Jericho, which is interesting, right there. And so, so they're on the edge there, and it's always just one off the top of your head. Every time you look at this, they were about to experience, going to the land. But the other thing to think about is that they just had a great experience or a victory over the Amorites and to the kings there. And so this was a great mission that, in other words, Israel was on the marching ground. They were ready to proceed, and of course, we find there's many of them that were of Israelites during that time, and of course, it caused Balak to be sore afraid and realizing he was outnumbered. He one of the things that you see here, he realized that if Israel knocked out the Amorites, who they were kind of close to, they were up in that same area, that really he looked at it as a sense that he had no chance. Verse 4 says, there so many of them will be like a company that, lick us, we'll be done in no time with these individuals. And so one of the things that you notice that he did here, Balak did, is that instead of facing Israel head on with military power, what did he turn this into? A spiritual battle. Because he started going after Balak or Balaam to call upon his gods, if you will, to curse Israel and to that he might drive them out, and that's why he sent messengers to Balaam to do this. And so he turned this into a spiritual thing, and of course, he basically. He went to try to hire Balaam to curse him. And if you notice verse 6, you find that Balaam had this reputation. Come now, I pray, curse me this people, for they are mighty. And he talks about the end of that verse. I want that he whom thou blessed is blessed, and he whom thou cursed is cursed. He seemed to have this reputation that this was something he could do. And so he must have had some of this done in the past. But I want you to think about this. Balak understood this. He knew this. And he also, turned this over to Balaam in a spiritual battle against God's people. But this is kind of pumping up his ego too a little bit. He's telling them all this stuff, we want you here, we're outnumbered, and we know what you can do. This people's too mighty for us, and so we want you to come over here because we know that the people you curse, they're cursed, the people you bless are blessed. And so this kind of sets the stage and no doubt he's already been looking at this in a sense that he's got a reputation, and oftentimes, and this is part of it, is the money part, which we'll get to here in a minute. But oftentimes, I read over this many times, but I think he also had a reputation to hold in holding, cursing who he cursed and bless who he blessed. And so, being this prophet, so-called prophet, he was someone that had this ego that he can do certain things, and Balak kind of rubbed him the right way to get him involved in this. And so we find that as Balak comes to him, he says there in verse 7, and the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with the rewards of divination in their hand. That's a bad thing there. And they came to Balaam and spake unto him the words of Balak. And he said unto them, lodge here this night, and I will bring you word again, as the Lord shall speak unto me. And the princes of Moab abode with Balaam. And God came unto Balaam and said, what men are these with thee? And the other thing you can see here is God had conversation with him, which is kind of interesting as well. And so how in the world does, is God speaking to him? But you got to remember, too, during this time, that God spoke to other individuals as well. Pharaoh spoke to him in a dream. He talked to the other king of Egypt during Abraham's time and told him not to touch Abraham's sister. So God had time to speak to these individuals. And so I wouldn't think Balaam, because there's always been a question, was Balaam really a prophet of God, or was he just one of these guys that was to me, he was just he was a false prophet. But when you look at his, he was able to speak to God. But when you look at what he was doing, and maybe he looked at this in a sense that just speaking to one of his gods. And Balaam, if he truly wasn't a real prophet, but he knew that, of course, this Israel was, this God was that he spoke to was the God of Israel. And so he spoke to him, and God spoke back. What are these men with thee? Verse 10, and Balaam said unto God, Balak the son of Zippor, king of Moab, has sent unto me, saying, Behold, there's a people come out of Egypt, which covereth the face of the earth, which is amazing to think about as well. Come now, curse me them, peradventure I shall be able to overcome them and drive them out. And God said to Balaam, Thou shalt not go with them. Thou shalt not curse the people, for they are blessed. I want to stop right there for a moment and just think about this for a moment. When God speaks, is it something that we should listen to? And God's wasn't just, well, maybe, or you could, and I don't know. And what was the answer that God gave Balaam? Don't go. That's it. It's not right. These are our blessed people. Don't go. And so that to me is a hard no. It's not right, right? And so as we look at this, and because time is flying for some reason, if you drop down to verse 15, the pot gets better, right? Because Balak gets, the people come back, and the forgive me if things not clear here, but anyway, verse 15, and Balak, that's probably better I just read. And Balak sent yet again princes more and more honorable than they, and they came to Balaam and said unto him, Thus saith Balak the son of Zippor, let nothing, I pray thee, hinder thee from coming unto me, for I will promote thee unto a very great honor, and I will do whatsoever thou sayest unto me. Come therefore, and pray thee, curse me this people. What did God say? Don't go. But Balak says what? Come on, man. I'm going to sweeten the pot for you. I'm going to give you, and this is where not only the money, but also, if you notice, promote thee with what? Very great honor. I'm going to lift you up, man. You're going to have a name bigger than anyone, and I will do whatsoever thou sayest. That's crazy. I mean, and so going back, he's already suggested in verse 6 that this is what you can do. He's already rubbed him a little bit, and now, and then Balaam says, I can't go. God says no. And then, they came back again, as we just read, and they sweetened the pot for him. And notice, again, what was God's answer? This is important. What was God's answer? Don't go. Don't go. Is there a problem with that? Every time we're told not to do something, it's like we're the kids. Why? Why is the sky blue? Why is that? Why can't I do this? And why can't I do that? Why? And it's like those, I just watched the show because I said so. That's what the old parents used to say. Because I said so. And God said no, and that settles it. And yet, notice what Balaam did. Verse 18. When he sees all this, now he goes to thinking, because now the pot's sweetened and everything. And Balaam answered and said unto the servants of Balaam, if Balak would give me this his house full of silver and gold, I can't go beyond the word of the Lord my God. Now he says my God, but to do less or more. Now therefore, notice though, I pray you, tarry ye also here this night, that I may know what the Lord will say unto me more. This is the problem with Balaam. What did God say? If you get anything out of it, what did God say? No. Why did Balaam go back to God?
Maybe he changed his mind.
And what would that do to the people around at this time? Well, God is one that just, you can persuade him a certain way, right? He's like just all these other gods. You can just persuade him. He's got money now, so you can persuade him to do what you want. But Balaam went back and said, I can't go. This is, good and all that. And even if he gave me, and he makes it sound like he doesn't want the money. Even if he gave me the whole truckload, of gold, I can't go. He just sweetened the pot, Even if he gave me 2 truckloads of gold, it seemed like that's what the wording he's using. I can't go. And so, but again, the king would pay him well. He would give him honor, whatever he desired. And the king, by the way, was desperate. And Balaam knew he was desperate. And that kind of puts it more on, Balaam's side, saying, listen, I could really turn up the wrenches here. And the key is, though, that God said no. And verse 19, that as we read there, he said that he wasn't interested in the money. But I will pray ye tarry here this night, that I may know what the Lord will say to me more. What is he going back to the Lord to find out if he changed his mind? But maybe to negotiate, it sounds like he was a negotiator. He was one who, maybe was looking for a different response than he had the first time. So when you look at all this, we can see that as we find out how we respond to God sometimes, when God says no about something, how far do we push it? Well, maybe God just didn't want me to do something yesterday. Maybe today's better, right? We kind of get this in-between thing. God said what? No. And he gave him an answer. These are a blessed people. These are my people. He said no. But yet we want to see, just like, well, maybe God was, he wasn't a good time for him. He was upset or something. Maybe I'll come back and find out what he says today. And that's how we treat God sometimes. We think maybe he'll have a different answer tomorrow about certain things. And so, but notice verse 20, because it's kind of interesting. And it kind of brings a point, what I mentioned not too long ago. But verse 20, it says, and God came to Balaam at night and said unto him, if the men come to call thee, rise up and go with them. But yet the word which I say unto you, unto thee, thou shalt thou do. And Balaam rose up in the morning, saddled his ass, and went with the princes of Moab. Now, what was Balaam thinking at this point? It doesn't say, but what were you thinking? We know the story. You could just come out. What was he thinking? I mean, there's an open door. There's an open door. God just opened the door for me. And I'm going to go right through it. Are open doors always good open doors? Now, we just talked about God testing. Is that right? He sometimes tests. I don't know if this guy was a prophet of God or not, but he's a weird one. But when you look at this, I look at this as God testing him. Okay, this is what you want to do. Okay, this is what you're going to do. But remember, God said what? No. And then he said, well, I'll go back and talk to God and see what he says. And then he says, okay, go. But he gave him some limitations. He says, I'll tell you what to say, and that's it. And so he set some boundaries. And
he also said, if they ask you.
If you ask, yeah.
And it doesn't report if they asked him.
It doesn't.
He probably.
And that's why I asked. What do you think he was thinking? It doesn't say that he has. Good point. He's already packing this. He probably was packing while he was praying. But notice, again, he saddled his ass, and then verse 22, now God said go, but then it says, and God's anger was kindled because he went. Wow. God said no. But he said, I'm going to go back and find out what God says. God said, fine. I know what's in your heart. I know what's driving you. If they ask you, go ahead. But it says they never asked him, which he probably was packing already. And so then God got angry with him. And there's a lot of anger here because this is where the donkey scene, which is always interesting. And we, if you keep reading here, he's riding his donkey here. Anger was kindled against him, verse 22, and he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the way, Brother Josh, right? And for an adversary against him. And now he was riding upon his ass, and his two servants were with him. And the ass saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way, and his sword drawn on the side. And the ass turned aside out of the way and went into the field. And Balaam smote the ass and turned to turn her into the way. But the angel of the Lord stood in the path of the vineyards, and the wall, a wall being on this side, and the wall on this side. And when the ass saw the angel of the Lord, she thrust herself in the wall and crushed Balaam's foot against the wall. And he smote her again, and the angel of the Lord went further and stood in the narrow place where no way to turn, either to the right or left. And when the ass saw the angel of the Lord, she fell down under Balaam, and Balaam's anger was kindled, and he smote the ass with the staff. And so there's a lot of anger going on. God's angry with Balaam. Balaam's angry with the donkey. And really, the donkey's angry with Balaam. A lot of anger going on here. But notice, because of time, verse 28, and the Lord opened the mouth of the ass, and she said unto Balaam, what have I done unto thee that thou hast smitten me these 3 times? And Balaam said unto the ass, because thou hast mocked me, I would there be a sword in my hand, for now I would kill thee. And the ass said unto Balaam, am I not thy ass upon thou have ridden ever since I was thine unto this day? Was I ever wont to do so unto thee? And he said, nay. And the Lord, this is the key, because it's crazy that the donkey saw God, but Balaam was so blinded that he couldn't see God right before him. Then the Lord opened the eyes of Balaam, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with the sword drawn in his hand. He bowed down his head and fell flat on his face. And the angel of the Lord said unto him, wherefore hast thou smitten thine ass these 3 times? Behold, I went out to withstand thee, because thy way, here's the key, verse 32, I went out to withstand thee, because thy way is perverse before thee. I was stopping you. So not only did God say no, he said, fine, go. And he was angry with him because he went when he shouldn't have. In his right mind, he should have stayed. He shouldn't have went. But he went, and then the angel of the Lord stopped him again. Stopped the donkey at least, but he was so blinded. Well, what was blinding him? All that money and all that wealth and all that stuff, that was what was driving him. And so when you look at this, he was blinded to whatever's going on. But understand God was, and he says there, man, I could have killed you if you kept going. But I stopped you because your way is perverse. And he finally, this is always interesting. We don't have time to talk about it, but it's always interesting. Balaam's here talking to the donkey. But Balaam's eyes were finally open, and the Lord, immediately rebuked him for his actions and what he was doing. And verse 34 says, and Balaam said unto the angel of the Lord, I have sinned, for I knew not that thou stoodest in the way against me. Now therefore, if it displease thee, I will get me back again. Sounds pretty confident, right? Sounds pretty legit. Is that a word we can use still? I have sinned, for I knew not that thou stoodest. I have sinned. Have you heard that before? Many times. Pharaoh was one that said what? I have sinned. But did he mean it? No. Did Balaam mean it? Usually there's repentance. If really did he repent? He continued on. And we find that, yes, he got caught, if you will, and his hand in the cookie jar or whatever. But when you look at this, we find that Balaam is one who's in trouble here, and he said, I've sinned. And so, and again, it's not the way that the Lord wants him to go. Now look over there and hold your place there in 2 Peter, because time is flying. 2 Peter chapter 2. 2 Peter chapter 2. This is the way of Balaam, and of course, what did I say? Yeah, 2 Peter chapter 2. And talking about false prophets and false teachers, he talks about that they have eyes, verse 14, full of adultery, that cannot cease from sin, beguiling unstable souls, a heart that they have exercised in the covetous practices, cursed children, which have forsaken the right way, and are gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Bosor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness. What was Balaam's problem? The love of wages. He loved the wages of what? Of unrighteousness. And of course, Jude 11 talks about this too. But the idea is that Balaam is acting like a hireling. Jesus talked about these hirelings that are wolves in sheep's clothing, that they don't care about the flock, and they're just basically there for the money. And so Peter was warning about these false prophets, that they're no different. And so the key is for us today, there are a lot of people out there that are just mainly profit-driven. They're just looking at using God's word, whatever it might take, that will, whatever religion. There's a lot of Balaams out there that will use God's word and God's methods as a way of profit, and they have no remorse. They say, we've sinned, we've done all these things. They have all the right words, they have all the right sayings, and they have all the the honor and all this stuff from men. But when it comes down to it, they're really not real prophets and real preachers. They're false teachers and false prophets, and so we find that Balaam is an example of that, because the only thing he is interested in is the money. He loves the wages of unrighteousness, and so God said no. But because of all the wealth and all the power and all that, Balaam said, well, I'll keep going back and find out what God will say, because, man, that pot of gold sure sounds good. And if maybe God will open that door just a little bit, I can go and have God on my side and also the wealth. This is kind of this little playing the part here of riding the fence, if you will. Look at Jude 11. Jude 11. Because Balaam really isn't outright rebelling. God told him no, but he's going back and asking the Lord. Right? Jude chapter 11, if you can find that. Jude, verse 11. Woe unto them, for they have gone the way of Cain, and ran greedily after the heir of Balaam for reward, and perished in the gainsaying of Korah. So you look at this again, talking about false prophets and all that, but the way and the heir of Balaam. Again, the heir is not full-blown rebellion, but how close can I get what I want and still claim obedience in following the Lord? Right? How close can I get what I want and still say that I'm in obedience in following the Lord? Because that's what he's doing. I asked him. He told me to go, so I'm going to go. But God was angry with him, and now he stopped him, and then he tells him again, not to go, and he stopped him. But then it says there, verse 35, and the of chapter 22 of Numbers. And the angel of the Lord said unto Balaam, Go with the men, but only the word that I shall speak unto thee, that thou shalt speak. So Balaam went with the prince of Balak. Well, God told me to go. What would you have done? Again, what was God's first answer? No. Well, God said to go, so I'm going to go. But we find here, really, he should have said, you know what? You stopped me, you told me not to go, and then you stopped me. You stopped the donkey, and you said you could have killed me. And so, really, what should I have done? I'm going to go back to where I came from. This is not working out for me. But instead, what did he do? He still continued on. He still continued on. And so, you know, he's not ignoring, he's not rebelling against God. He's just simply seeing how far, it's not a simple no, but how close can I get in compromising? How close can I flirt with this and still have God on my side? How close can I stay to God and still get what I want? And so, again, looking for these riches and looking for the honor, Balaam, of course, learned something in all this. And in chapter 23, in verse 8, he knew that, of course, that he couldn't curse God's people. In verse 8, how shall I curse whom God hath not cursed, and how shall I defy whom the Lord hath not defied? I can't do that. God is not going to allow me to do that. And verse 20 says the same. He says there, Behold, I have received commandment to bless, and hath blessed, and I cannot reverse it. I cannot reverse it. What God says, it will continue. So what is the doctrine of Balaam? If I can't go straight ahead, I'm going to go around a different way. Look at Revelation 2, verse 14. I said all that because what is on Balaam's heart? From the very beginning, his ego's pumped up and the money's there, but it's his mindset, his heart to do what he wants to do. But at the same time, it almost feels like he's riding a fence. He's trying to talk to God and trying to get approval, but then he's got a heart to get what he wants, right? And so if I can't attack, directly, then I'm going to attack indirectly. In Revelation 2, God, the Lord had a thing to speak here of the church there. He says there in verse 14, But I have a few things against thee, because thou hast them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed unto idols, and to commit fornication. So if I can't hit God's people one way, directly, I'm going to hit them in another direction. Now, real quick, Numbers chapter 25, you can just note that. And this is, I know our time's gone, but verse 1 through 3, it says, And Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. And they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods, and the people did eat and bowed down to their gods. And Israel, the word joined, they made a commitment. They joined together with them. Joined himself with Baal Peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. Now, here's the thing that I want you to see. What did Israel lose? And I set this up at the beginning. They were about to get into the what? Promised land. And God said that they were what? Blessed. Right? Did he not? They were blessed. And now it says that the anger of the Lord was against them. And what did they lose? Purity. Right? Because they caught up with these Moabites, the daughters of Moab. And so in other words, what Balaam did was told Balak, hey, I can't curse God's people because won't let me, won't reverse it. But here's what you do. You go send, your young women over there, and it's the flesh that will attract them. It's what they desire will attract them. I won't be able to curse, get a hold of God's people this way, but I guarantee you they have a fleshly desire to go and sin in a different way. And we always have to be reminded that when you look at this, it was this very act, and of course this committing whoredom with the daughters of Moab, that was not only just these sexual acts, but it also came with the religious part, right? Because they're sacrificing to their gods. And that always goes together, which in turn basically was saying, God, you're not our God anymore. And so, again, the doctrine of Balaam was what? To cast a stumbling block to God's people, to the children of Israel, so that they would not, be, now that doesn't mean they weren't God's people or anything like that, but it sure caused them to they were on their way. God was blessing them. They were continually marching. They were heading in a forward direction. And here it says in verse 1 of 25, verse 1, in Israel abode. They stopped. And they hung out with here. And they joined themselves together with these Moabite women and practiced all these things with them. And they were yoked together with them. And so they lost their purity. They lost their respect, really being one of God's people. And they lost their favor with God, because we find out that the anger of the Lord, was God angry with Israel before this? No, he was kind of, but not really. He was leading them in this direction of bringing them to a place where they could dwell. And here, though, he's so angry with them that what does he do? He ends up killing a bunch of them, like 24,000 people, because of this. And so in one day. And so we find that this, now here's the thing. When you look at this, sometimes we think about, the doctrine of Balaam, and we think about the heir of Balaam, and it says the way of Balaam. And by the way, I didn't mention, but the way is just, that was his path. That was what it wasn't just a one-time thing. This was a way, just like we talk about in the New Testament, this is the way of the Lord, and this was his way of doing things. This is something he habitually done. And this way is a way of going after money and using spiritual things for profit. And the error was to cast a stumbling block before Israel that they might sin before the Lord. And we find that up to this point, here's the key, up to this point, Israel here, they weren't defeated by armies externally, because we find that they just won the Amorites, and Moab was scared of them. So what brought them down? It wasn't external, it was internal. If Satan can't hit external, he's going to come internal. You see that? And so there is a lesson here to learn, because Moab, this doesn't, and the gods of Moab, they don't go away. We find that their god, Chemeth, or whatever they worship, the sun god, or whatever he was, Solomon later on builds a temple for one of his wives that worshiped this. And we find Joshua dealt with these individuals. And so not only that, but the Lord puts the error and the doctrine of Balaam to be careful of, because of the Lord's church there. Again, talking about compromise, talking about putting away God's standards, especially standards of morality and personal conduct. If sometimes Satan doesn't use doctrine to bring people away. We've got people here that are strong, doctrinally strong, but man, if he can't get that, what does he do? He'll do the fleshly thing, right? And I guarantee it, if people are drawn away of their fleshly lust desires, their worship usually goes with it. That is the doctrine of Balaam, to create stumbling blocks. He doesn't do it head on, he tries, but if he can't, there's another way to do it. We have to be careful and be warned, real quick. We're told not to love the things of the world. You know, 1 John says, they're less of the eye, less of the flesh, and the pride of life. But real quick, Numbers 25, because you're there, right? Verse 16. Numbers 25, verse 16 says, And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Vex the Midianites, and smite them, for they vex you with their wiles, wherewith they have beguiled you in the matter of Peor, and in the matter of Cosbi, the daughter of Prince of Midian, their sister, which was slain in the day of plague of Peor's sake. They beguiled you. And notice for 2 Timothy 2, verse 14. We read this, and just to go back to it, but he's talking about the Balaam. And 2 Peter, and talk about these false prophets and how they work. But he says there, 2 Peter 2:14, having eyes full of adultery, these false prophets, and they cannot cease from sin. But notice what they do. They beguile unstable souls. Unstable souls. They're ones who become unstable, and it doesn't necessarily have to be doctrinally unstable. It could be fleshly unstable. They're just unstable. They're not as close to the Lord as they should be. And those are the ones that Satan can get after, right? If he doesn't get it one way directly, he can sure come around another direction. And so we have to be careful because unstable souls and our fleshly appetites usually are gateways to more things that lead us away from God rather than being closer to the Lord. And so there's a lot there, and I didn't get to just hit a lot of these because we know the story, but it is important to understand that we constantly have to be willing to guard our hearts against the things of this world, that Satan is alive, he's well, and there are many things out there that we should not be ignorant of his devices, as Paul says, right? So, and so remember, if he can't get us one way, he's going to try to do it another way. And so we've got to be careful in all aspects of our lives. Stay close to the Lord, stay grounded in his word. Brother Christian mentioned that he's trying to strive to do, Laura, he's trying to do his best to stay closer to the Lord and his word, and making it a point. And so that doesn't mean he's perfect. No one's perfect, but man, the closer you are to staying with, staying and getting a schedule, or at least making a determination, doesn't mean you can't trip up, but it does, help to when these things come along. But just the idea that his mindset and his was totally on personal things and not the Lord. But he was using the Lord in such a way, and kind of this riding the fence. The Lord opened the door, but man, I sure want this. And so there's lessons there for us too, and we didn't get that. But just the fact that God, when he says what? No, he means no. Do we have to keep going back to him and asking again, maybe tomorrow or the next day? No. All right. Anyway, any thoughts, comments? Yeah, Brother Josh.
Yeah, I personally believe Balaam was a believer. He says, Yahweh, my Elohim. So he calls him the Lord is God. He also prophesies about Messiah, saying that I shall see him, but not now, and I shall behold him, but not nigh. And, various other things like that. He refuses to lie about what God says, which a bunch of false prophets later on don't do. I think the way I see Balaam, he seems to be, to me, more like Saul, where both Balaam and Saul are chosen by God. I mean, Balaam talks to God directly, just like Moses Saul, I think Saul's eyes were on the people as much as he wanted to serve God. He's like, I fear the people, I have to do the sacrifice even when I'm supposed to, and the animals look good, so I'm going to keep them around and I'll keep the king alive. He constantly seeks after God. We see that Saul does that all the time. And yet, he's always turning away from God because he always wants to serve the people more than he wants to serve God. And it seems to be the same way with Balaam, where Balaam's like, I can't say any more than what the Lord tells me to say. Like, that's how much respect I have for him. But at the same time, I really want that
I want
money.
this.
Like, yeah, he has this, as much as I want to follow God, I want to follow after those riches. And so it seems he's a lot like Manasseh, where Manasseh is called an evil king, even though at the end of his life he turns to God. Balaam seems to also have been one who followed God, but his life was so evil because he just could not get away from those riches that he kept on seeing. So eventually it cost him his life.
Yeah, and you find that in many places as well with Samson and many others that had these problems, and and it's a good, you have all these verses, and he did prophesy about the Messiah, and so it is an interesting thought when he's interesting. He's an interesting character, as well as Saul. Now, I know there's debates about Saul. Was he saved or not? There's debates about that, and so it's just a interesting thing. You look at these characters like this, and how they were used by the Lord. And so, but the one thing is for sure, as Brother Josh mentioned, he had this struggle again of trying to follow his own wishes, his own desires, and really talking to God is almost like he was trying to get God to accept what he wanted. And so that's really the lesson, is that we got to be careful of not trying to get God on our side of what we want. We need to be on God's side of what he wants. And so we get in trouble when we try to put our will above his will. And so that's the key. And Satan has ways of getting us, and we just got to be aware of those ways. Any other comments? Yep.
Reminds me, we've all been kids with parents, and tried to talk our parents into something that we wanted. Maybe they knew it wasn't good for us, and we'd try to find ways to get around it, and so that seems like that's what he's doing.
Yep.
Too.
Sister Phyllis.
Yeah, I just was thinking what Josh said and what you had just said too. There's lots of examples of wrong choices being made, and we can tend to say, well, he was wrong, shouldn't have done that. But we live in a fleshly body just as they did, and can make the same mistakes. So I don't see those examples there to tell us, to show us, just what not to do, but to let us know that if we do them, this is what's going to happen. So you're better off not to. It's to show us the good and bad side of everything, so that we can make better choices in our life, hopefully.
Yeah. And 1 Corinthians chapter 10 really follows that, right? There are examples there to follow. Anyone else? All right. Well, let's stand. And good thought. Just wanted to throw a couple things out there. It just was on my heart because, we don't know exactly. One of the things that Satan wants to do is get you out of church. He wants to get you out of fellowship with the Lord. He doesn't want. He's not happy when people are close to the Lord, and he'll do whatever possible to get people. We just have to be aware of those things. Be aware of your surroundings. The moms especially tell their kids and daughters when they get out of the car at the supermarket or whatever, look around you when you get out. Make sure no one's there, and if you go back to the car or whatever, look in the back seat or whatever, I don't know. Just be aware of your surroundings, and really we got to be that way in every situation we're in as well. Be aware of our surroundings, and of course, understand where our heart's at too. You know, is it trying to get God on our side, or are we trying to do what God wants us to do? So, and hopefully, we're trying to get God, get on God's side, not the other way around. All right.